Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game SO. Today we're going to continue the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and I got a little July 4th special for you guys today, even though I did record this on July 3rd. Last time I talked about Resident Evil 2 on the channel, I said on the Turbo Core I was able to finish the game from start to finish with no freezing whatsoever, and others have been able to get the same exact result as well. But it seems like based on user reports on the MiSTer Discord, as well as some other commenters, depending on how you play the game, it seems like there's easier ways to potentially freeze the core and the game. It seems to be down to hanging out in the wrong spots at the wrong times, or going ahead and playing the game in a certain order, which can cause a freeze state. It's extremely rare, and I just said if you do have one free, save early and save often, but RuleSet went through the game and found a way to apply a patch which seems to have removed all of that very sporadic freezing as well, which is absolutely awesome. That adds to the list with Jet Force Gemini and Conker's Bad Fur Day now being 100% playable on the core. Now do be aware this patch is still basically only 3 hours old as of the recording of this video, so it's possible that there may still be a freeze somewhere, so you need to test, and if you have any freezing, report it on the MiSTer FPGA Discord, or at least let me know in the comments or on Twitter and I'll get it over to the right people. But Resident Evil 2 is just one of those classic games, and when I tested through it on MiSTer FPGA, no matter what I did, I was not able to get the core or the game to crash. But that might be down to the fact that for the most part I avoid combat with any zombies that are not essential. I run past everything unless I need to kill it for storyline reasons, just so I can conserve that ammo and play it more like survival horror, in which I'm trying to avoid the bad things on the screen. But apparently there are some consistent crashes if you play the game in an odd manner. Like on the third screen, RuleSet was able to find out that if you hang out with the burning cars too long, the game can crash. So what he did was applied a 16,000 cycle delay when the CPU unhalts the RSP, or reality signal processor. And while 16,000 cycles sounds like a lot, it goes by in the blink of an eye, because you have to think of how many different commands the CPU can do within that period of time. These cycles are absolutely huge numbers, so you'll never notice this in regular gameplay. It will not be apparent. But apparently that did help with some of the freezing situations. Leave me a comment down below and tell me if you've ever gotten Resident Evil 2 to freeze on the Turbo Core. For me and a few others I've talked to, we've been able to play the game completely straight with both Leon and Claire, but for others they have had that freezing, and again I think it's just down to how you play the game and how long you hang out on certain screens. But the best part is a patch is here now, so I'm going to show you where to find it and how to install it, that way you can play over the holiday weekend. At this point in time, it's not yet pinned on the MiSTer FPGA Discord, but I'm sure it'll be in the pins when you actually go over there. You'll see a little explanation from RuleSet as to what the patch is going to do and how to download it. You'll just see here, if you hover over that patch, you can click download, and you'll do the same thing once it ends up in pins again, probably already in pins by the time you're watching this. I will leave a link to the web patcher that I use. It applies BPS patches and many others, and all you will do is go ahead and click choose file on the ROM, and you're going to use the North American version of Resident Evil, Rev 1 right there. Then you'll go ahead in the patch section, choose the file for the patch wherever you downloaded it, and hit patch. That will produce a new version of the game in your download folder, and you just put that over onto your MiSTer FPGA on the Nintendo 64 games folder, like you've applied every single other game so far. And that should prevent freezing in Resident Evil 2. Now again, it is still possible that this may freeze every once in a while because the patch is brand new as of today. So you need to go in and you need to test it, and if you find any freezing, report it back to MiSTer FPGA Discord under the Nintendo 64 channel, and they will take a look at it and you'll be able to probably get a new patch eventually. But this is awesome, and it's a really interesting situation because, again, some people have ultimate luck with this game on the Turbo Core, others seem to find consistent crashes, and it really is a very strange situation. And now's where we get nerdy with it, so if you just want to know about the patch, you can stop watching and go back to your 4th of July, but now I get to talk about the halt status of the RSP, that 16,000 delay on the cycle, and everything else. What that delay is probably doing is just giving the core enough time to be able to actually do what it needs to do. 16,000 cycle delay with the latency in the RAM being shared with both the MiSTer OS scaler and everything else that's needed to actually have a MiSTer be a MiSTer must be out of timing in certain circumstances. So it seems like adding a delay in there allows for that latency to basically clean itself up, for lack of a better term. These electronics are very sensitive in the way that they expect response within a certain set period of time. And when I mean time, I don't talk about seconds or minutes like you and I think of them. We're talking about measures of time where 1,000 of them have gone by in this sentence alone. It's so fast, so incredibly quick that it doesn't really make sense to the human mind. Just be aware that the timing of these things is incredibly fast and is incredibly tight as well. And it seems like if the timing gets too far out of line, you have issues where the game may potentially freeze. And RuleSet tried different delays on different portions of the hardware on Nintendo 64 and even said that 16,000 cycles may be too much of a delay, but it's what worked for him. It may actually tighten up in the end if there's another patch. But honestly, there's not going to be anything really perceivable to you, the player, when it comes to that overall timing. And that's what we talk about when we talk about cycle accuracy. There's a 16,000 cycle delay on the unhalt for the RSP. So that wouldn't technically be cycle accurate to real Nintendo 64 hardware, but it would be so incredibly close that you're not going to be able to perceive it as a human mind. These are measures of time and measures of data that you really can only see on paper if you record them. So when we talk about cycle accuracy, if the Nintendo 64 core was absolute perfection on the cycle accuracy front, and there was no delay or latency in the RAM being shared with the core components of MiSTer FPGA, you would probably never see a freeze like this in and of itself. But it is just down to the fact that the RAM that the core is using is shared with other assets and resources for the underlying MiSTer FPGA architecture, including the scaler. And before you ask in the comments down below, could a custom build of that be made without the scaler involved? It really can't. People have already looked into that. It's already been a question many people have asked. And that's just the fun part about going through stuff like this and what RuleSet's been doing. Basically just changing little bits of the game around to be able to tolerate whatever latency might be in the RAM when it comes to MiSTer FPGA and Nintendo 64. It's like coaxing a stubborn child to eat his vegetables by putting a little sugar on top of it, for lack of a better comparison. And honestly, with these patches, you're getting so many more games playable on Nintendo 64 today, and I will have a video on Conker and Jet Force Gemini combined talking about the patches, showing you how to apply them and all the rest of that after the holiday. It's just been a very busy week for me, so I'm trying to get these things out in the order in which they occur. Now, I understand that patching the game isn't the same thing as having an absolutely perfect core, but think to yourself, does it really matter? If you're playing the game and it's playing exactly how you remember it, and you would not be able to tell between real Nintendo 64 hardware and MiSTer FPGA the difference, does that actually fundamentally matter? Because I see some people in the comments saying, well, that means the core isn't perfectly cycle accurate. That is absolutely true, but the question is, does it even genuinely matter? If the human mind, you the player, can't tell, then honestly it isn't really worth trying to button things up any further until a new FPGA device comes on the market that wouldn't have the RAM latency. Patching these games is 100% acceptable to me, and as long as everyone gets to play more games and have more fun doing it, I am happy for the win. So this leaves Rugrats in Paris, as well as Polaris Snowcross and one Mahjong game, as well as Battle for Naboo as the 4 games that continue to freeze. And it is very possible we see patches for at least a few of those, but honestly, if nobody ever looked at Rugrats in Paris and the Mahjong game, I would not be upset. I don't really think we need a 100% playable library if it means someone has to spend dozens of hours trying to make a Rugrats game work perfectly. But if you want to play Resident Evil 2 today, go ahead and grab the patch from MiSTer FPGA Discords, apply it the way I showed it to you, and you will be 100% fine and ready to play as far as anyone knows right now. And again, if you find any freezing after you apply the patch, let me know in the comments down below. That way I can direct the information to the right people so they can take a look at it. And if you have a capture of that crash as well, or can at least send some photographs of where it happened or some details as to how it happened, 10 out of 10 helpful. But short of that, I hope you're having a happy 4th of July if you live in America, and remember to be careful with those fireworks. Do not blow your hand off like Leon Kennedy blows zombies' heads off. And when you are testing this patch, because it was just made yesterday, make sure you save off it enough so you don't lose too much progress if you do find a freeze. But short of that, we are done. Hope you enjoyed the video. Happy 4th of July, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.